Burkina Faso is again in the global spotlight due to discussions within its military-led government about potentially reinstating the death penalty. This move comes after the country abolished capital punishment in 2018, and it is considered amid a broader political and social context as Burkina Faso grapples with military rule, security issues, and international attention. The re-emergence of capital punishment as a potential tool marks a significant departure from Burkina Faso's recent legal trajectory, especially considering its historical abolition of the death penalty and the broader global movement towards its reduction. This analysis explores the background of this development, the implications of such a move, and the broader regional and global context influencing these decisions. Historical context of the death penalty in Burkina Faso. To understand the significance of these discussions, we must first examine Burkina Faso's history with the death penalty. Capital punishment was formally abolished in 2018 under then-President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore. The country had not carried out an execution in over 3 decades, with the last instance occurring in 1988. That final execution involved 4 individuals convicted of attempting to overthrow President Blaise Compaoré's regime. This long gap, coupled with the official abolition in 2018, was seen as a step toward modernizing Burkina Faso's legal system in alignment with global trends advocating for the end of the death penalty. However, the possibility of reinstating capital punishment now signals a stark change in the country's approach to justice. A government source confirmed that the military regime is considering amending the criminal code, with plans to present the issue to the Transitional Legislative Assembly for further debate. This potential policy shift is indicative of broader legal reforms under consideration, reflecting both internal political dynamics and external influences. Political context, the role of military rule. This debate comes at a time of significant political change in Burkina Faso. In September 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traoré led a military coup, overthrowing President Kabore, who had been unable to effectively address the escalating security situation in the country. The coup was largely driven by concerns over the government's failure to control insurgent groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State in the northern and eastern regions of Burkina Faso. Since the coup, Traoré has taken control of a transitional government with the aim of restoring order and stabilizing the country. Under Captain Traoré's leadership, the country has seen significant shifts in its political landscape, with promises to restore civilian rule. However, in May 2023, despite a previous pledge to return power to civilians by July 1st, Traoré extended military rule for another 5 years. This decision drew criticism both domestically and internationally, raising concerns about the military's prolonged grip on power. Despite these concerns, Captain Traoré has faced these challenges with resolve, striving to address the security crisis and other pressing national issues. While the extension of military rule and the introduction of controversial laws, such as the bill banning homosexuality, have sparked heated debates, it is also important to recognize that Captain Traoré's leadership is shaped by the immense security challenges Burkina Faso faces. His administration is tasked with navigating these turbulent times, and while the return to civilian governance has not yet occurred, Traoré has worked to stabilize the country in a difficult context. The proposed reinstatement of the death penalty is part of a broader set of legal reforms under consideration by the government. Justice Minister Rodrigue Bayala confirmed that the issue would be addressed within the draft criminal code, indicating that the death penalty is not the only change on the table. Other reforms are being discussed to align with Traoré's broader vision for Burkina Faso's future, suggesting that this is part of a larger strategy for governance, security, and legal development. Human rights implications and international reactions. While the government's efforts to restore stability and address national security concerns are commendable, the return of the death penalty to Burkina Faso's legal system would have significant human rights implications. Abolishing capital punishment was a progressive step for the country, positioning Burkina Faso alongside other nations in Africa that have moved away from the death penalty in favor of human rights reforms. The reinstatement of the death penalty, however, could attract criticism from international human rights organizations like Amnesty International and the United Nations, both of which have long advocated for the abolition of capital punishment as a violation of the right to life. Amnesty's annual reports highlight a troubling trend across Africa, where executions have increased in recent years. This shift comes amidst an era where many African countries are considering alternatives to the death penalty, moving toward reform in line with global human rights norms. While some countries, such as Kenya and Zimbabwe, are actively working to abolish the death penalty, Burkina Faso's decision to consider its reinstatement reflects the complex political environment in the country. The reintroduction of capital punishment could put Burkina Faso at odds with international human rights standards, potentially straining diplomatic relations with the European Union, the United States, and other global partners who oppose the use of the death penalty. Moreover, the decision could have broader regional implications. In West Africa, the death penalty remains a contentious issue, and Burkina Faso's move to reinstate it may set a precedent for other nations grappling with security concerns. The military government's actions, including the possible use of capital punishment, may be seen as a way to assert control in a time of insecurity, sending a message to neighboring countries struggling with similar issues. However, it is essential to recognize that true stability can only be achieved through adherence to human rights and the rule of law, not through punitive measures that risk further isolating the country on the global stage. Debates within Burkina Faso and the broader African context. The debate surrounding the death penalty in Burkina Faso is part of a larger conversation taking place across Africa about the role of capital punishment in society. Many African nations continue to retain the death penalty, citing reasons ranging from national security concerns to public opinion. The ongoing insurgencies and terrorist threats in regions like northern Burkina Faso complicate this issue, with some governments justifying the death penalty as a tool to combat terrorism and political unrest. However, as Amnesty International and other human rights groups have pointed out, there is a growing global movement towards abolishing the death penalty, and Burkina Faso's possible reinstatement of capital punishment risks moving the country in the opposite direction. Countries such as Kenya, Gambia, and Zimbabwe are actively pursuing legislation to abolish the death penalty, signaling a shift in regional attitudes toward more humane and restorative forms of justice. Burkina Faso's consideration of the death penalty in the context of a national security crisis is not unique to the country. In many African nations, governments have turned to the death penalty to address perceived threats to national security. However, the broader debate across the continent highlights the need for reforms that prioritize human dignity, rehabilitative justice, and long-term peace. Burkina Faso's consideration of reinstating the death penalty signals a significant shift in its legal and political landscape. The country's military-led government, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, is grappling with security challenges and the complexities of governing a nation in turmoil. Traoré's efforts to stabilize the country and address the growing security crisis are admirable, and his leadership reflects a commitment to navigating difficult times. However, the potential reinstatement of the death penalty poses a challenge to the country's progress in human rights and legal reform. While it may resonate with some who see it as a necessary measure for restoring order, the reintroduction of capital punishment could undermine Burkina Faso's international reputation and strain relations with human rights organizations and foreign governments. As Burkina Faso moves forward, it is essential to continue prioritizing reforms that strengthen justice, human dignity, and the rule of law. Captain Traoré's leadership holds the potential for positive change, but it is crucial that the country remains committed to a path of reform that protects fundamental human rights. The outcome of the death penalty debate will shape Burkina Faso's future and its place in the global community. It is imperative that the government explores alternatives to the death penalty and continues to build a legal system based on justice, fairness, and respect for life. Burkina Faso is at a pivotal moment under Captain Ibrahim Traoré's leadership. While his efforts to restore order are commendable, the proposed reinstatement of the death penalty risks undoing progress made in human rights. The 2018 abolition of capital punishment was a positive step for the country. If you believe in justice and human rights, here's how you can help. Like this video to support the movement against the death penalty. Comment your thoughts and join the conversation. Subscribe to stay informed and part of the change. Together we can advocate for a future that respects life and dignity for all.